what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go over the tools and some of the functions of Designer Edition. If you look at my screen, mine looks a little bit different than yours. I'm working in the Business Edition, but all the tools that I will be going over will be the same for you. So functionally, there is no difference. And this will be our introduction. I have listed a full webinar schedule for the month on our website now. They range from $10 to $15 based on level, on how difficult it is. And you can go ahead and purchase those, and you can either watch them live or you will get a recording of it after. So hopefully you enjoy this webinar and learn a lot of stuff, and hopefully this is not the last time I see you in here. So if you have any questions while I'm going, feel free to type them in. I will try to get all of them as I'm going. If not, I'll come back to you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Here we're in Silhouette Studio. You can see I just opened it. So when you open Silhouette Studio, you're going to get these recovered documents. This is just things that that you've had open before. It'll auto-save it for you. I don't need it right now, so I'm going to close it. Hi, Jerry. I'm glad you got here. So I'm going to go over here. Here's our main bar. This is very similar to a lot of programs that we work with, all the Word programs, Microsoft. You can create a new design here. You can open something. There's a couple other things. You have our pick scan mat. That's for a different feature that Silhouette has. I have done webinars on it in the past. I'm probably going to do some in the future. Right here, save. Now, if you're working with the first Cameo with the buttons, you can cut from an SD card. So if you were to lay out your design here, you could save it to the SD card here. And then you could cut straight from your cutter without your computer if you were in a bind. Right here, if you have a printer, this is to send your design to the printer to do a print and cut. And then you have your send to cutter, which you can also do over here. And then these are our zoom tools, and I'll show you how those work once I show you some other stuff. Then over here, very similar to other programs, this is your select tool. This is your go-to. You want to use this all the time when you move things, basically when you want to select things. And then right here is our point editor. I'm going to show you how that works in just a second. Okay, so right here we have our rectangle tool. It can make rectangles, and so you can see it'll give me my dimensions as I go. One trick with Silhouette and a lot of other design programs is that if you hold down Shift, it will make it proportionate for you. So if I hold down Shift right now, it's making a perfect square. So if I just bring my mouse up or to the side, it senses that I'm holding Shift, so it's going to make it a square for me. I'm going to hit my select tool and delete that. Now I'm going to go back to my point editor. So this, you can change your points. You can bring this in. You can add another point. And this is just how you can modify your object. This is a great thing to use, especially if you're, let's say, tracing a design and your design may have traced a little bit messy. You can go in and delete some of these points. This is basically every spot that your cutter is going to turn. So if you have a design, let's say you have a straight line here and you have all these points and they're shifted a little bit, well, it's going to make a sloppy line for you. So you want to try to clean that up as much as you can. And you could just go here and delete these points like I'm doing here. So that's our point editing. Let me select this and delete it. Now under here we have the rounded rectangle. It's very similar to the rectangle tool, except you have these two little nodes here. You adjust them and it can round it off. So this is nice if you're cutting pillow boxes, or if you just don't want that harsh corner there. Let's say you're cutting metallic Easyweed. Sometimes the corners can get a little dented. You can round those corners and it'll take up a little more space. Right here we have our ellipsis tool. You can make ovals, all of these, and just like before, hold down Shift, and now I have a perfect circle. I'm going to go ahead and select these. You can hold down Shift and select multiple objects, and you know you have an object selected when you have this gray box around it. And I'm going to hit my delete key and move on to these other tools. So we have our Polygon tool. This, you'll make points. You can see it's making a line as I go, and you can continue to make points. And once you get towards the end, it recognizes that you're close to your beginning point, so it's going to go ahead and close my shape for me. So I've just made a shape with my Polygon tool, and right below it, very similar, we have our rounded polygon. So it'll take it, kind of try to smooth it out for you. But the same function as before, you can do that and it'll close it. Hit my select tool, delete it, and then right above our rectangle tool, we have this line tool. it makes lines. And just like with your square and your circle, you can hold down your shift key and it will do lines at 45-degree increments. So you can see I'm holding down shift and I have a perfect straight line. You can see my cursor moving a little bit, but it still has a line. And so I can do that, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, and so on. So this is great if you want to do, I don't know, like a zigzag pattern or a chevron or something along those lines. You can control the angle that your line is going at. Select tool, grab all these, delete. Now we have our pen tools. I don't use these too much, to be honest with you. I don't love them, but you can basically write. So this one will write exactly what you have. And then we have the smooth freehand tool, which it tries to figure out what you're doing and helps you. So you can see it's fixing it. Trying to write my name here. This is, if you had one of those little, I don't know, tablets, those would be nice. But you can see if I do a line, it's trying to fix it. Circle, it rounded it out for me a little bit. Go over here, delete that. Now we have our arc tool. This is a great way to use if you want to curve your text or make something without doing a whole circle. You click one point, go to the next one, and now as you lift, you can make your arch, or your arc. So let's say I want to do like a half circle. I can click there, and then this little lever, I can adjust the actual size of it. So I can bring that back, and now I have it at 180 degrees. This is just under 2 inches wide, and I have that size arc. And so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And now we have our Polygon tool. So the Polygon tool, you click, and then you can drag out to find what size shape you want. And it always defaults to a pentagon. You can bring it down to 3 sides, a triangle, or you can go all the way up to about 12 before it gets messy, and then it's just a circle. Because, you know, circles are just rounded out. So if you go and you have 60 sides, if you zoom in, and here I have my select zoom, it's just smoothed out. So we have all of that. And let me select that and delete it. Now we have our text tool. Go over here and click. I can type what I want. Oops. And over here you can edit your text, change your justification, and then you want to select your text and you can edit it. Spacing, you can increase the spacing between your letters. If you have multiple lines, you can increase your line spacing. One thing to remember with your text tool is that you want this green box around it. So if you have a green box around your text, then you can edit it. If you double click on text and you don't get that green box, then it may have been converted to an object that you can't edit anymore. So let me get my select tool, delete that, and now we just have our eraser tool, which erases things. So we'll go over here and erase it, and then our knife tool, which will break it apart. So you can see right there, we have that. So select over here. And so that is the design side. Now I'm going to go over and show you this top right panel, which is where the big guns are. This is my favorite part of it. So I'm going to go over here, and while I'm over here, I'll show you some of our zoom options. Let me make a couple shapes so you can see what I'm talking about. So right here we have our panning. So let's say I want to move something really quick. I can grab this hand and move it around. So that's great if you're zoomed in and you want to move just a little bit. Then you have your zoom, zoom in, zoom out. My favorite that I use all the time is this select zoom tool. So you can select an area and it zooms right into there. That's my favorite to use. And we also have the arrow where you can click down. I'm bringing my mouse up, so I'm zooming out. And I'm bringing my mouse down and I'm zooming in. So these are great tools to utilize as you're designing because it can really speed up your work. And then let's say you want to see your whole workspace. You can press this right here and it brings my whole workspace back. So for me, the two tools I use the most is the select zoom and then see workspace. I'm going to select all of that and delete. Okay, so now we have all of these tools right here. I'm going to make my square. So the first one here is your fill tool. Now the fill color is one of the most important things that you should do while designing in Silhouette Designer Edition. The way you work is that your cutter is going to cut each one of these lines. So when you start working with more complicated designs, multiple shapes, text, it can get confusing with what is actually being cut, what is dead space. So as soon as I make a shape, I try to fill it in with the color so I can differentiate it. Now the color doesn't particularly matter as much. If you want it to be as realistic as possible, you do want to fill it in with a similar color. But for me, I just pick a color and then I choose whatever vinyl I want. And if you wanted a very specific color, you could go to Advanced Options and choose whatever color you'd like. So you see that? We have that there. And a couple other tools that I don't use as much, but they're great for if you're doing print and cut or any other kind of crafting. You have your fill gradient. You can choose all of these colors and fill them in that way. And then always this crosshatch pattern, that always means no fill. And then pattern, which is very similar, you can fill it with a pattern, and you have all of these here. Now we have shadow. This is great for print and cut. You can add shadows to your shape along with your sketch tools. And once again, great for print and cut or the kind of crafting. Do not try to cut this on your silhouette. It will be very, very difficult. So let me get rid of that. And then I'm going to go ahead and just fill this in with another color so I can work with that. Now I'm going to skip this. This is our rhinestone tool. I'm going to skip that for now and come back to it to show you that in a minute. And then one other thing, you can change your line color. So let's say you have a design and you want it to be red. You want to see it. You can change your line to whatever color you want. And this is great if you have a lot of different shapes in there and you want to make sure you can totally differentiate them. You can change your line color here. And these are your lines that will show up when you cut. So over here, we also have line style. You can make some lines in there. So let's say I want to do this. Then I can select it and make it dotted, change all of that. It's whatever you'd like. And I'm going to go ahead and delete it. And then up here is just another way to edit your text. So you can have it on the left side and the right side. Silhouette gives you several different ways that you can edit something. Whichever way is preferable to you, that's what I would recommend doing. And over here is move. So you can, I always like to just click and drag, but if you did want to move it, you can move it to the right, move it down, and then you can also assign places on the mat. So if I want it to be 4 inches at the 4 mark, I can do that, and it brings it right here. And so then we have rotate. So there's 2 ways you can rotate your shape. You can grab this little green dot and move it this way, Control Z, or just like before, you can hold down Shift. Now it does those 45-degree angles for you. Or you could do all of these. And then you can also see right here, you could do these choices, 180 from that dot. Now, here's our scale tool. This is the easiest way to resize a shape. Let's say you have a little tag and you wanted to cut out vinyl to go on it. Well, your tag is 4 inches wide. I can go over here and make sure I get it cut exactly the right size. So I can select my width here, hit 4, lock aspect so it keeps it that ratio, hit apply. And now you can see it's 4.001, but it's a 4-inch shape. So now I don't have to guess. I don't have to click on this, drag it. Okay, let me get as close as I can. No, I can just go to my scale tool and say, okay, 4 inches. There we go. Then over here we have our shear tool. I don't use this too much, but you can modify your object a little bit. You have to select it. Do that. You can do different shapes. It's great to add perspective if you're doing some advanced designing. You want it to look like you're looking at something from an angle. That's a great tool to use for that. And then right here are the align tools. These are my best friend. So this is great for when you have multiple shapes. Let's say you're making a knockout design. Go ahead and fill in my shape right away. Okay, and go back to my align panel. So I'm going to select both my shapes. You can either drag a box around it to grab them or hold Shift and grab both of them. So we have our center. It aligns them right on each other. The left, the center, and so this would be easier for me to do that way. Center, you can do that way. Align it to the right, and then vertical aligning, so on and so forth. And so these spacing tools are some of my favorite tools to use. I use them pretty often. So I'm going to grab this square, and I'm holding down my Alt key. I can duplicate something quickly by holding down Alt and dragging down. So I have my 4 rectangles right here. They're not spaced evenly, but I want them to be. I can select all of my shapes and space vertically. So what it did is it spaces your inside shapes to fit perfectly in between your outside shapes. Yes, Alt, Jerry. If you hold out Alt, so if you hold out Alt, you can see I have this little plus sign over my shape. Then I can click over and it duplicates it to your area. And so when you do your align spacing, it'll do it between your top and your bottom ones. And that's the same way for your vertical ones. So you can see these, you can have those shapes there. Space vertically, these will probably overlap. So you can see that. They're a little bit uneven, so I want to align the middle, and I'm all set. Over here we have our replicate tool. There's a lot of cool things you can do with that. So I'm going to make my circle, select it, fill it. Now I can go over to replicate. I can duplicate it to the left, all of these, mirror, and then you can also do rows and columns. And then let's say you're doing a shape that you want to do over and over again, like you're making a bunch of tags. So I'm going to drag this over. I'm going to scale this. I want it to be a 2-inch tag. So I'll type in 2 inches, apply. I'm going to select this, fill in the color, and then I'm going to select it again. And I am going to fill page. Look at that. So it's filled in the page. That's the max number of that shape that I can have on there. And over here we have our nesting tool. This is good if you're doing scrapbooking, or if you are cutting a bunch of things that you want to maximize your space. You can take this and you can nest it. Basically it brings your shapes in as close as possible to maximize your space. And you can also do padding and all of that. So let's say I have these, bring my padding up a little bit. So you can see it added a little bit more space to that. Now, here is the modify panel. This is the big dog of this bar. This is my favorite part. So I'm going to do my 2 shapes, and what it does is it'll modify one shape by the other. So I have my square and my circle. So what it does is it alters your shapes by, it alters them by the top one. And let me show you what I mean. Go to my modify panel. So I have both my shapes. The first one is weld, so it'll take them and make it into one object. So my circle just disappeared. That's because I've welded them together. Now select both of these. We have our intersect, so it only keeps the part that your 2 shapes are intersecting. Let me go Control Z, go back. Now we have subtract, and we have 2 types of subtract and subtract all. So if you look from this picture, this subtract is going to take out from the bottom what's on the top. So I'm going to hit subtract here, and now I have my square with no circle in there because it's taken out that circle. Now subtract all will take out the overlapping part. So I'm going to hit subtract all. It doesn't look like anything happened, but if I click off, now from the blue, the circle is gone. Subtract all is great to use when you're cutting a lot of glitter designs, because you don't want to layer your glitter on top of each other, because you'll get water on there, and it's not advisable to layer glitter on top of glitter. Going back, we can do these 2 and crop. So what it does is it's going to crop your bottom design by the top one. So you can see crop, and it's gone to the circle. And to show you that in a different way, I'm going to do it with some text. So I'm going to go over here and type Lisa, and I'm going to take this and stretch it, and I'm going to bring, and so you see I typed this second, so you see my circle is underneath it. I'm going to right click it and bring my circle to front. Go over here, and now I have my circle on top of my text. And go over here, modify, crop it, so you can see, so you can see that only the bottom part is left, but only where the circle was. So I've cropped the bottom by the top. How's everyone doing? You guys getting what I'm saying? Do you have any questions? Sounds like you're all doing good. Cool. So I'm going to go over here and show you trace. Now I'm going to do a very, very basic trace. I do have some webinars coming up where I will be going over tracing again. And I'll go over it a little more in depth for you. So I'll go over here. So what I want to do is I want to grab a JPEG. I'm going to open and grab this anchor. Now, right now, I can't edit this. This is not a vector for Silhouette Studio. So if you see, I double-clicked on it, and the only corners that show up are right here, the corners of my JPEG. So I'm going to bring this in. I'm going to scale it down. And here is our trace button. I'm going to select my trace area, highlight it. So now, with tracing, your shape that you end up with is everything that's in yellow. So if you see online, a lot of people say, why did I get these double lines? Why do I have 2 lines on my trace? I'm sure you guys have seen that a million times before. That is because you basically just trace the outside of your design. So I'm going to hit trace. You can see over here I have that double line. You see that? And that's a really common mistake with Silhouette, is that they see that the outside of their shape is traced, and they think that the whole thing is traced. What you want to do is have everything yellow that you want that object to be. So I'm going to go ahead and go to trace area, select it. Now there's a couple different options here. High pass filter, it looks for contrast. So when you have something that's a flat shape, and I always recommend in Silhouette to get a silhouette of an object if possible. So I'm going to unclick high pass filter. So you can see most of it's already yellow. There's a little bit of black around here. I'm going to bring my threshold up. That's how powerful your trace is, how your search is. So I'm going to bring that up. And so you can see barely any black is left, and then you have your scale. The higher your scale is, the fuzzier your lines are. So if I bring this up, see how blotchy that is? I want my lines to be as sharp as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my scale down all the way that it'll let me go, and it's 4. Hit trace. Now you can see I have my outline there. I'm going to fill it in. So now I'm going to double check to make sure I had a good trace on it. I'm going to check my points. Going to double click. So you can see over here, I have a few points that I don't really need, these right here. So I'm going to delete that, and it smooths it out. This one's a pretty clean trace, but you'll get a lot of times if you do another trace of an object that's not as easy, you could get a lot of jagged lines. You can see it right here. It's slightly curved, but it picked up a little fuzziness. You can delete that just to clean up your design, so it'll cut easier when you have your machine. So you can see this line's a lot sharper than this one. And then with tracing, it's just a matter of finding your right combination of high pass or low pass to really get what you want in your trace. I'm going to go over here. How many of you know how to cut larger than your cutting mat? I know some of you do. Jerry, you don't? I thought you did. Okay, Jerry. Well, I'll show you. It's very easy. So over here, you have your design page settings. You can have your width and height. You can't have your width any wider than 12 inches because your cutter is only 12 inches. So I'm going to go over here. Let's say I want to cut it 15 inches. So I'm going to do 15 inches. So you can see everything within this red is your safe area. If your design goes past it, it's not going to cut it. It's going to cut it off right here. So you want everything to be inside your red area. Well, how many people have set up your design and you fed it through your cutter, but it stops at a certain place? It still will not cut the whole thing. Because I've had that too. So a common problem is that you'll set up your design, okay, I want it to be 12 inches by 15 inches, and you design it, and then it stops. Well, what happens is that, see right here, my silhouette is still reading that I have a cutting mat. So what it does is it says, okay, well, their design is 12 inches by 20 inches, but I can't do it. I can't feed it anymore because I won't have the mat to help me. So if you're not using a mat, you'll just go over here and do none. So now I can see on my red line, and it goes all the way to the bottom. Now if you have the larger mat, the 12 by 24, you can even put in cameo 12 by 24. So look at that. So my design is not as long as the larger mat, so it's going to stop halfway through. But it's a pretty good deal. So I could take off my cutting mat and realistically cut 12 by 30 if I wanted. So you can see it just expands my workspace. You just have to make sure to turn off your cutting mat. Now, I don't super recommend doing that because the longer your design is, the harder it is for your the harder it is for your material to feed in straight. Might be a great use to use the silhouette roll feeder. I haven't used it personally, but a lot of people would definitely would definitely use it and recommend it. Jerry, with your cut settings, you actually don't need to change them for the mat. I've had good success using the same cut settings because basically the mat acts as the cutting strip on your cutter. So I haven't had any difference. Yeah, really. So it helps out a lot. You don't really have to adjust anything. And then over here, I'm going to continue on in the silhouette. Let me go ahead and make my workspace more manageable. Right here, we have registration marks. You can add that if you're doing print and cut. Unless you have, you know, the printable vinyl, you don't need to use it. And then we have weed settings. You can do weed lines around your design. And, you know, it helps with some of the setup. You can use it. You don't have to use it. So let me go back and show you the offset and the rhinestones because I know that's what you really want to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open my anchor again. So every time you bring in an image, it's going to make a new tab down here. So go over here, grab my anchor. I have this. For those of you who have been in my webinars before, you recognize this anchor. Go over here, go to my trace panel, select my trace area, grab it, turn off my high pass filter. I'll turn up my threshold. And so bring my scale down, then trace. We have this here. We have our shape. Let me fill it in. Okay. Now the offset panel. This is going to do a line around your shape. So we have two different types of offset. Go to offset. We have right here. Jerry, that extra line of settings, that's because I'm working in Business Edition. So we have that. We have our offset here. The default is 0.125. We can do that. You can increase your distance and you can lower it. I like 0.125. It's a great base to start with, so I'm going to keep it here. And then you can do round or corner. So you can see it catches the corner more. It's a little bit harsher. And then you have that round one. I'll go ahead and do round, apply, and now I have an offset up here. You can also do an internal offset. Let me make this a lighter color so you can see it. I'm going to grab this, go back to offset, and now internal offset. So that default for internal offset is a lot smaller, but you can see now I have a shape that's on the inside. And you can also adjust that from your offset panel. So now I have three different sizes of my anchor. I have this one, that one, and this. Now, an easy way to do a rhinestone outline is, Jerry, you would use the internal offset. I've used it, like let's say I have this shape and I wanted to make it just an outline, but I needed it to stay this size. Well, if you look, when you do an offset, it kind of, I don't know, looks fat. So if I can do an internal offset, then I keep the shape a little bit more. So I can increase this a little bit, apply it, go over here. So now I have these two. See these right here? Now, do you know how to make that into one shape? So I can take this, let me bring this up a little bit, and I want this to be one shape, so I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to do something called, you can do weld, but if I want it to be an outline, basically I want to tell Silhouette Studio that this line right here, that this line here and this line here form one shape. So I'm going to go ahead and grab both of these, and that's called a compound path. So what I'm going to do is check that. And so now you can see it took my bottom shape and my top shape and said, okay, well these are one, let me make this line. So an internal offset, you'll use it for that. I don't use it too much, but if I want to keep that outside shape, I would do it in that sense. So I'll go over here and let's say this is my outline on my anchor and I want it to be rhinestone. I'll go over here and we'll go to our rhinestone panel. So now we have all of this. This is the good stuff. And there's different ways that you can fill. You have your edge fill, so it'll take the edge of it, fill it with rhinestones, and the most common size of rhinestone are SS10, those are 3 millimeters. It'll always default to that. You can see we have our edge fill with SS10 rhinestones, and the cool thing about the rhinestone feature in Silhouette is as you increase the size, it'll automatically place and remove stones to make sure that you have the right setting. And those of you who have worked with rhinestones know, as you cut your template, as you cut these holes with silhouette, it's very important that they are the right size, otherwise your stones won't brush in. I'm going to bring this over here. I'm going to do one more trace of this anchor. I forgot to make a copy of it. So I'm going to select my trace area, turn off high pass filter. Everything I want is yellow. I'm going to go ahead and just trace it that way. So you see over there, we have that. Double clicked it. My points look fairly good. I'm going to go back to my rhinestone panel. So now you can see a couple different things. We have our linear fill. So this goes all the way to the side. It's like a grid. So as you expand it, it'll fill it in more. Linear fill is good for square shapes, more hard corners. So over here we have our rectangle, and I want to do a linear fill with this one. See how it fills it in pretty nice? That's great for squares, things with hard corners. Over here, I'm going to go back to this one, and rhinestones. Now we have our radial fill. So that works from your outside edge in. You can see with my anchor, the outside looks pretty good, and then it starts to scatter as you get inside. This is good for circles and rounded shapes. Let me grab this circle, select it, go to rhinestones, radial fill, fills it in pretty nice. So you can see it that way. You have your radial fill. Let me delete that. So let's say I wanted this anchor, but I needed to adjust some of these stones. They're not really doing too great. I can go over here. You have a couple options. You can increase your spacing. Let's say you want it to be a little more sparse. Select it. I can increase my spacing this way, or I can even bring it in a little bit. Now you don't want your spacing too close together because you need that space for your sticky flock template. So, you know, I would do no closer than like 0.03. So we have that right there. So I brought my spacing in, and I want to adjust it a little bit more. I can release my rhinestones. I click that. Now every stone has a little box around that. Every stone is its own property, its own shape. I can take that, click off of it, and I can take this stone, bring it up, adjust it over, and so now I can do something like that. So it's a great way to tweak things. The one thing to remember for those of you who aren't working in rhinestones already is that your templates you can cut one time and use over and over again. So I definitely recommend spending more time with your rhinestone designs, making sure it's perfect, because it's a one-time investment. You can use that again and again. And then a couple more rhinestone features. You can do single click, 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 click. I'm making little rhinestones, or freehand. Let's say I wanted to do a detail around it. I can do a line of rhinestones with there. I'm going to go ahead and get my select tool. I'm going to do Control A, select everything, and delete it. Cool. So only a couple more things to go over. So let me make a couple shapes in here so you can see how the cut panel works. Make a circle. Oh, forgot to select it. Okay, so we have our circle and our square. And this is a great way to see why we do subtracts. Over here we have our cut settings. You have your standard and cut. So you can see right here, everything that it will cut will have this bold red line around it. So this can be a problem if you're doing glitter vinyl because you don't want that to overlap. Now, that's why we do our modify. So I'm going to go ahead and select both of these and do a subtract all. Go back to my cut settings. Now you can see I don't have a thick red line here, so it's not going to cut it. We can do it that way. Now, let's say you are cutting something that's very intricate and you need to cut several colors that intertwine. Well, did you know that you can cut them without even moving them off the mat? Yeah, you don't have to take it and move it off. You can leave it right there and just choose it. So what you can do, and this is one of the cool things about Designer Edition, is you can go to Advanced and see this cut order. You can do by layers, line color, so both of these have red lines, or fill color. So now I can just uncheck my purple, send my green to the cutter. You can see all of that is thick, and then choose my settings, and then send it. Once I'm done with that, uncheck it, and choose my purple. So you can do that. And yeah, Jerry, you can bring an actual multicolor design. Let me grab one. I have one in here somewhere. Let me just grab one I saved in my library. Okay, so here's like a little, oops. Here's a little chevron thing I made. So I want to keep this all here. I don't want to edit it. I don't want to just drag it out. I can go right here, go to Advanced, and you can see it's picking up all of my colors. So I always like to do weed boxes around my designs. I'm going to go to No Color, so this is always my line. And I want to cut my pink first. So I'll click that, cutting my pink, unclick it, click my mint. Now it's cutting my mint. And so you can quickly go between two colors without having to drag it around. You don't have to worry about accidentally resizing something or changing things around. You can have it right there and cut it. And then one last thing, right here we have all of our presets. And have you already gone in and added in your own cut settings? Yes, Jerry, No Color is my weed box because I didn't fill in that square. Cool. So if you look over here, we have all of our silhouette commonly used. Then you have your silhouette defaults that they put in here. Well, if you look down here, I have something called user defined, and then you can see these things: glitter, HTV, sticky flock, Easyweed, FDC, everything. Well, you can go ahead and put in your own cut settings. That way you don't have to worry about adjusting it. It'll save it. So right here we have our plus and minus. That's not a volume control. You can go and click your plus, and we can name our materials. We'll do fun material. And you can go over here, click enter. So now I'm editing fun materials. You can adjust where you want your blade to be. And of course, you have to adjust your blade yourself, but this is a great reminder to tell you what your blade is normally on. And then adjust your speed, thickness, whatever it is, and it'll save it. So let's say I want to go and I use a sketch pen, whatever. And then later I want to go back to my fun materials. Look at that. It saved all of my cut settings for me. So we definitely recommend doing this, especially when you're cutting your Easyweed and your glitter. Of course, you always want to do a test cut. Always, always. You never know how much you've used your blade, all of these things, and you can use that and have a base. And you don't have to save it, Jerry. It just stays there and it'll save. It'll save itself. So even if you edit it, so let's say I was doing something with Easyweed, and the last cut I did, I needed to slow it down. So it saved my speed from my last cut. Now, if I wanted to cut something later and it was really easy, of course I'm going to bring my speed up to 10. And, I'm going to go back to sticky flock, whatever. And then Easyweed, it just saved my 10. So it's a great way to streamline all of your work. You definitely want to move as quickly as possible because you know this, your time is money with your business. So definitely take the time to put in your cut settings, make sure that you have them to where you are, but always test cut it. You don't want to cut something and do all of that. And so, Dora, on multicolor cuts, how would you put your glitter on the cut mat? I would just put it like any other vinyl. You definitely want to do shiny side down because that's your carrier. And you would just do your you would do your subtract all to make sure you don't have glitter on top of each other, and then you'll send it through and cut it. Tasha, since you can resize the rhinestones in silhouette, how would you make sure the size is correct for SS6, SS10 stones when you cut, as you mentioned? Well, if you design totally in Silhouette Studio, then it should be fine because it's still reading it as a rhinestone object. So let me go ahead and I'll make a circle and convert this over to rhinestones for you. So over SS10. So right here, if you made it in Silhouette Studio and it still recognizes it as a rhinestone object, then you can go and you can change it. So you can check to see if it changes, all of that, and you have your sizes. Now there's two ways you can do it. We can release our rhinestones. So you can see all of that. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here and select one. So we have this, we have our one rhinestone here. It's still finding it as a rhinestone object, so it won't really tell me the size because it doesn't want you to do that. Right here, I have my stone selected, and it says 0.130. So that's the right size for SS10 stones because you want your stones to be anywhere between 0.129 or 0.131. That's the proper size for your SS10 template. And that's a great way to check if you, let's say you got a TRW design. Let me see if I have one in my library. Yeah, I have one. Yeah, you use it during this with the scale. So this is a TRW design that we have. You can see the SVG, it comes in with these boxes. I'm going to go ahead and ungroup it. So I have each one of these stones as individual. I'm going to zoom in. And here, if you bring this in, it'll tell me my size right here. So this is 0.129. So that's a great size. If I were to cut this right now, it would be the proper size for my rhinestone template. But that's kind of all I have for the quick introduction. Did any of you have any other questions on Designer Edition or any of those, you know, any of the buttons that I went over? This was just kind of like a quick overview. Of course, I'd love to see you another time in some of my other webinars. I'm also going to be doing one-on-one trainings if you ever want to do, you know, like a phone session if you wanted to come here. We are in the process of trying to do something similar to our TRU, but for silhouette. So lots and lots of really great things for you. If you have any other questions, don't be shy. You can message us on Facebook, call us, or email us. You can email us at info@therhinestoneworld.com.